Hall-Corbin, your host. It's nice to have you with us today. I first and foremost want to say I want to introduce my guest, who happens to be a good friend of mine, and her name is Valerie Foxx. And Valerie does a lot of stuff. Valerie is, I still believe she's the diversity officer for the post office.
Yes, I still work in
Still
diversity.
do that.
Yes.
And she's also an actress, and she's also a storyteller, and now she's an author.
Yes.
Valerie, thanks for coming and joining us this afternoon.
Well, I'm really excited to be here. It's amazing that the studio is right in my own community and that I'm a guest here.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why one of the things about when they moved here, I thought it was perfect because it fit right within the community. And I can get a lot more community folks to come.
Yes, I agree.
You know? Absolutely. So, Valerie, I guess I actually want to talk about you. Let's talk about where you grew up and where you're from, family, and all of that. Are you a Roxburyite? All that good stuff.
Yes, yes, indeed. I live in Roxbury, been here my whole life. My parents are from North Carolina, and I write a little bit about that in the book. One of my chapters is Summertime Down South, and it takes place in North Carolina because my parents were sharecroppers. And so I have a whole story on their, when they were growing up, and what was so beautiful about my parents and grandparents growing up in the South is that we spent our summer vacation in North Carolina. And it was an opportunity for us to see a different lifestyle. Growing up in the city, sometimes life is hectic.
There's no peace.
No peace. And it's funny that you should say that because that's one of the things I highlighted in Summertime Down South was the fact that that peace and tranquility, that was natural for them. Whereas when I went there in the summers, that is what attracted me to going down south. And so as a kid growing up in the city with a hectic life, that peace and tranquility was something that was a gift. And that is what...
And that was a gift to you.
It was a gift to me. And I thank my grandparents for having the farm. Grew up on a farm, too, over 106 acres of land. And they sharecropped tobacco. So I learned how to do that as an early age as well.
Yeah, I remember. I said, she's doing tobacco. Oh, my God. I love that part. I read that, and every now and then I'm reading through, and she's cracking about coming back and washing up and getting that tobacco smell off you, and I'm saying, wow.
Yes,
Isn't
yes.
that something?
Yes. Of course, I wasn't old enough to really be merged in all that tobacco stuff,
yeah.
but I did, have my, the thing that was the most important fun part for me was that it was only for a couple of weeks out the summer. And I could return back home, but it was working up in the barn. And at the barn, we would be handing tobacco and, with family. And so everything that we did, it was you started your morning with family.
And you ended the day with family. So it was like family all around,
yes.
24/7.
Yes, it was wonderful, because in the city, when we had times where I came from that generation where you had your meals together.
Yes.
You ate dinner together, and your father started the meals off. And,
there you go.
So that's what's missing today.
With me, I have my grandparents, and they were all with my grandfather, right there. My grandmother one end, my grandfather the other, my mom in the middle, and my sisters. So I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you find, or if you ever really noticed, the differences between going south and being with your grandparents and family down there, but being with family, your sisters and everybody up here in the north? What differences?
I think the differences is the fast-paced lifestyle. Like in the South, things were slower. You spent more time with each other because everything you did, you worked together, you ate together, you played together, you went to church together, and you did everything together. As opposed to in the city, we went to our own separate schools, we had our dinner together, but then there was the playtime, depending on your ages. I came from a family of 8, and so for me, my younger sisters were like 4 and 5 years difference, and that could make a huge difference in a family.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And so the things that we did together, I often felt by the time the younger twins came, My mother had 2 sets of twins. Let me start there.
Wow.
And I was a twin. My brother, Barry, and I were fraternal twins.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then
Okay.
5 years later, my mother had identical twins, which was my sister Vanessa, and her twin was Vera.
Okay.
And so I refer to them as past tense because both of our twins had passed away at separate times in our lives. And I talk a little bit more about that in the book Love Lives On, because there were so many tragedies that I decided to write about it, focus on them with the goal of having people appreciate their loved ones today. You know, instead of, what happens is a lot of times, and you may be aware of this too, is after a person passes away, then you hear all these wonderful things that they did. And, and it's too late. And I would think that the perfect example for me was when my father passed away in 1993. He had leukemia. And all these people came up to my mom and I and was talking about how wonderful my parents were and how they helped them get a start. And, because most people came from the South and they had to stay with someone.
Yep,
and
exactly.
So I felt like all these wonderful things I think my dad should have heard.
Oh,
and he was gone, and didn't hear any of that. And so on a separate occasion, my sister and I, Vanessa, we planned this event, and it was called Celebrating My Mother. And we had everybody come out and passed around a microphone and talked about how my mother touched their lives while she was alive. And thank God she still is.
Yes, yes. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Yeah. I want to back up to you for a moment.
Okay.
You've been the diversity spokesperson for 30 years now.
Yes, yes.
Did you want to do that? Was that something that came about because you thought maybe this is what I should be doing as far as my job and my work is concerned, or were you elected, as I would say?
Well, for me, the changes that I went through in my postal career, because I started in the post office in 1984, and I saw a lot of opportunities that were not afforded to people of color. I mean, there were a lot of us that worked in the clerical craft, or the mail handlers in the workforce, but when you go up the corporate ladder, there were less and less of us there. And so what I did was I would put in, the Postal Service allows you opportunities to take temporary assignments while you maintain your regular full-time position, but you'd have an opportunity to learn from different departments. And at the time I came into the post office, I have a lot of energy. I'm a very positive, energetic person.
Yes, you are.
I would volunteer for every opportunity that was there. And I had a lot of good mentors in the post office. And so that led me from one position to the other. Initially, that was not my calling. But as I went through my own personal experiences, I set the goal so that I would help as many new hires that come on board. And then I would be the person that they could come to. Because what I found fascinating for me is that when I initially started there, before I got in the diversity department, was that I was a mail processing clerk. But there were a lot of wonderful elderly women that worked there, and like they would say, how the women of color, it's a smile, or it's a hug, or it's a hang in there, honey.
Yep.
I got a lot of that. And so that is what shaped me to want to be like the women that inspired me.
You. That was your inspiration.
That was definitely my inspiration. On those nights when you didn't think you could do it anymore.
Like, I gotta get out of here.
The culture was shocking.
Yeah, the culture.
The culture was shocking. I mean, I came from the civilian world. Initially, let me just back up for a second. Initially, I joined the post office in 1974.
You did?
I came right out of high school. It was my first job. I did not last long. I lasted probably a few months because the culture was so shocking for me being a teenager and a person of color that I just didn't fit in. And I wasn't at a point in my life where I had enough confidence and belief in myself that I could do anything, so I left. And that was one of the few things that I look back on that say I didn't, that I quit doing. And so what happened after that, I said, look, I never quit at anything, right?
See?
So it took me almost.
I think you sound like me a little bit there.
It took me almost 10 years to get back in between them freezing the exam.
exams.
Remember how they used to
Yes, I
put those on
remember.
hold? Well, I made a dedication that if I ever got back, that I would leave when I was ready.
Not when they say you want to
And
go.
not when they say it's time for me to go. And so, I mean, I survived a lot in the Postal Service, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made going back, because now I'm older, fast forward 10, 11 years, from 73 to 84.
Okay.
Now I have a son, I'm married, you know, my goals are different. And so I came with a set that, attitude that I was going to learn everything I could learn and then pass it on and give it back. So that's diversity. There was a diversity specialist.
Oh, okay.
And I mentored her she mentored me, I'm sorry, for a long time. And then I shadowed her in her job. And I volunteered for every committee that I could be on.
Did you really?
Yes, yes. So
See?
my name became a household word, Valerie Foxx, Valerie Foxx, Valerie
You're right.
Foxx, right?
And it did. You said people, I used to, you know, just listening to the guys or people in the post office, and they'd be saying, Valerie Foxx. I'm saying, I know Valerie. I'm saying, what's Valerie up to now?
That's it, that's it.
But that was good because folks had that.
Yes.
You know, they had that you.
They had me.
that, yeah, they had you.
Yeah, and I was that light, you know,
There
and
you go.
I was
That's
that
what it
light
was,
for
that
them.
light for them, exactly.
And I also believe that people can do anything if they work hard enough and put their minds to it. But to see me in a leadership type role so that they could then see themselves doing the same
being able
thing.
to do the same
See?
thing.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I continue
They
that
say,
today.
she's here, she's been doing it, she's done it.
Yes,
Hey, I can do it too.
I can do it too.
I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
That's it.
Let's delve into the book.
Oh,
We've done a little bit, but let's delve into the book some more.
yeah.
My first question is, what made you want to write the book?
It's funny, that's a good question. Because for years I've held this story close to my heart. Initially, when I was going to write the book, I wanted to interview my mother. And because I wanted to find out how she could survive, a mother could survive the loss of 3 children and 2 grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very young. It was, when I saw the strength that my mother had, it made me want to write about her. So
Okay.
this happened years ago where the seed was planted. And so I conducted these different interviews with my mother, recorded her on tape and everything. So
Okay.
that was where I was going to start it. But it's funny, I started typing out this information, and last year I went to visit my mother in North Carolina, and she was sitting around with her sisters. And I had brought my mother a draft copy of what I wanted to write about. And it was mainly, 90% is about my mother. And so my mother had me read some excerpts from that draft copy to my aunts. And then she said, and Valerie's going to write a book. Now, once my mother said Valerie's going to write a book,
Uh-oh. Valerie?
my aunts wanted to know,
See?
when was I going to write this book?
Oh, wow.
And so months had passed, and I actually attended a workshop. And the workshop was a 9-week workshop to teach. The very first workshop was a 1-hour workshop on how to write your bestseller in 1 hour.
And you probably said, yeah, right.
I said, yeah, you know, I couldn't, I'm thinking,
nah.
you know, a little skeptical.
That's right.
You know,
1 hour?
1 hour bestseller. I'm thinking, how?
Yeah.
So that made me sign up for the free workshop.
Uh-huh.
And at the free workshop, they had you write out sort of like an outline. They asked specific questions, and they asked you to like do little brief highlights, like little bullet points on what you
Okay.
would write in your
your
book.
book.
And so other things started coming out. I mean, things that I wouldn't even think about was going to go in the book. So the whole concept of the book was born, but then what content went in it was totally different. And I decided to focus on the 4 different tragedies that happened in my life, whereas the first one I mentioned to you already happened in 1974.
Right.
And I was 18 years of age, and my whole world changed. And I self-appointed myself as the person who was going to take care of my parents, because I thought, they were only in their 40s.
But you were going to take care of them.
But yeah, and to me, you always think your parents are so much older. And so my parents were only 40.
I feel that for you. I'm doing it now, so
See?
I feel that for you.
Yeah. And then I was going to also wanted to fill the need. I thought my older sister, Cheryl, who had passed away at 21, 22, she would have wanted me to take charge because she was the leader and the mentor for all of us.
You felt like you needed to follow in
I needed to do that. I needed to do that. And I didn't want to ever be a burden to my parents, so I just kind of was the obedient one in the family that just did what I was instructed to do. Yeah. So.
When you began to write, now you've already done this little masterpiece, you brought it down to your mom, who passed it on to her sisters, and everybody said, oh yeah, she's going to write this book. How did you start? What was the beginning?
The beginning.
Did you sit down and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it.
No, I didn't. What happened first was the workshop, the how to write your book. That was the first thing. But what came out of that was the brainstorming. You weren't supposed to put anything in order. We were just supposed to brainstorm, put it all down on paper. And that's where it started. I think what helped me, though, is that I'm a person that likes to set goals and deadlines. And so this program that I ended up registering for was called the 9-week bestseller formula.
Oh.
So I took a course for 9 weeks. The first 3 weeks, you're writing the content of the book.
Oh.
The second, third week, you are promoting your book.
Really?
And then the last 3 weeks is marketing your book. So for me, I could see 9 weeks.
Yes.
And the other thing is they told us that, in my mind, I'm thinking writing a book on my mother's story. I'm thinking a novel. Okay, back in the day, you wrote a novel.
Right.
They were encouraging us to do an easy read, something somebody could throw into their purse, read at a doctor's office, on the train, and I could see that.
Let's see, I think I read 2/3 of this book on the bus.
Did you really? See, that's what I'm hearing from people.
I'd stick it right in my bag.
Yep.
See, yeah.
So, I think having the structure, and then there was also, I took the course online, and it was 1 night a week for an hour.
Oh, okay.
And then you had your homework, and you were held accountable. You have your accountability partners, so you know that if you're supposed to have a homework assignment done, by next week, and you know that there are other people holding you accountable, you find that you kind of stick to that plan. And that is what really was a tremendous help for me, was enrolling in that course and then completing that book like that. The stories came from my own personal experiences, too. And it was such a heavy, heavy topic to write about tragedy that I just wanted to sprinkle it with some love. And so that's...
And I could see you doing that.
I sprinkled it with love, and that's where the Summertime Down South came in.
And I liked the part, where you talked about your sisters and how y'all used to do all kinds of funny things together.
Yes.
And having, what was it, you guys used to do musical?
Yes, we were entertaining ourselves.
You were entertaining yourselves.
We were entertaining
and sometimes
ourselves.
you entertain family members.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There was the sprinkling in of the love.
Yeah. I'm so happy you had a chance to read that. And I think that, a lot of times we all have family and we all have our own dysfunctions and issues that sometimes we have a tendency to carry and hold stuff that really should simply be let go.
Fair.
Really, let it go.
Yeah.
And because I think that the things that help us in life is having the faith, the family, the love, and friends.
That's true. That's true. And I noticed that while reading, I noticed that every time there was a new tragedy, besides having family, you guys had many friends.
Absolutely.
And that was like, they were like right there.
Right there.
Some of them were even there before family got there.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and that's a beautiful thing.
It is. It is. It's the hugs. It's the kisses.
Kisses,
It's the kind
it's going to be
words.
okay.
It's going to be okay.
You know, we're right here with you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And it was a faith, too. You know,
Yep.
my faith grew stronger. Like I said initially, I wanted to know how my mother could survive the
Survive
loss of
this.
so much. But then it was her unwavering faith that inspired me to, like, my mother's relationship with, my mother's a Jehovah's Witness. And her relationship with God made me really want to search for my own self. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I found her inner strength, and then that's what I wanted.
You wanted what she had.
I wanted what she had.
Yeah. You wanted what she had.
So, and I think that with that faith, I was able to overcome all the losses and see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and that we need to be more kind and loving toward one another.
I agree. I agree. Sometimes it's hard, but I agree.
It's hard. It's hard. You know, I was told one time that sometimes you love your family and they're close to your heart.
Yes.
But it's okay to love your family at arm's length, too.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'll leave that one alone.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's
But it's true.
It's true.
It's
okay.
very true. It's very true. We've talked a lot about this book, and it's been wonderful, and I love it.
Thank you.
But we're gonna kind of put a little bit of Valerie in here again,
Okay.
because Valerie is an actress.
Yes.
Valerie is a historical actress. Valerie,
Yes.
tell my TV audience about what you do as far as being a historical artist, actress, because I know already.
Well, I am fascinated because one of the historical characters that I portray is Phyllis Wheatley. A lot of people don't know the history of Phyllis Wheatley, but she was the first African-American poet. And she was kidnapped and brought here from Africa and sold right here in Boston in the year 1761. So I'm going to talk about her story. The next character that I also portray is, I did my own rendition of Miss Jane Pittman. And oftentimes it was inspired by the televised version, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, played by none other than
Cicely Tyson.
And so that's what inspired my character of Jane Pittman. And so I have the opportunity to portray both of those characters this month at the Great Hall.
And it's interesting because it's Black History Month.
Yes, it just so ties in together. You know, and
yes.
The storytelling, I think, is, you know, we all have our own stories, but communication is a great tool in that when we need to highlight the stories that happened in our past and not be afraid to be honest about what happened. It was an ugly part of American history. And a lot of times people don't want to talk about it.
No, they don't.
They'd rather deny that it ever
Never happened. Never existed.
And so I feel that by doing theater and the arts, that it's a safe environment to discuss any topic.
I agree. Well, I'll tell you, we're going to take a break in about 30 seconds, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about you as an actress, what you do to get ready for something like this.
Oh, okay.
So we'll be right back. Don't leave us. We shall be back to Artists of Color.
Today's spotlight is on Artists of Color.
I'm Elaine Hall-Corbin, your host and producer of Artists of Color, an art and cultural program that features artists. Please join us for Artists of Color.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Today's spotlight is on Artists of Color.
I'm Elaine Hall-Corbin, your host and producer of Artists of Color, an art and cultural program that features artists. Please join us for Artists of Color.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Artists of Color. I am Elaine Hall-Corbin, your host. And today my guest is Valerie Foxx, not only an artist, but also now a writer. Valerie, thanks for coming to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've been having a great conversation.
Yes, it's been really nice.
I'm loving it because I'm learning more about you and more about, actually about you writing this book, because I've always known a lot about you. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about what it means to get into character, what your research is when you do historical performances such as Miss Jane Pittman and Phyllis Wheatley. Let's talk about that.
Well, Jane Pittman is one of my longest historical characters, right? Because she's been around over 30 years.
She sure has.
So ever since I saw Cicely Tyson do Jane Pittman,
oh, okay.
That was the first scene.
Okay.
So I played that movie a bazillion times.
I bet you did.
Right? But what I wanted to focus on was the day they discovered, the day that they were told that they were free, and that they were no longer slaves, and also the day that she got her name. Her name was no longer Ticey, it was Jane.
Yes.
And so those are the two parts of the story that I built my skit around.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that's how you did. Well, of course, I did not know that's how you built that.
Yes.
So when you took those two pieces, I'm assuming that you had to do a lot of research.
Yes.
And learning more about Miss Jane Pittman. I guess this is a question I've never ever asked anybody. I always knew it was a movie, but was that ever actually a real life person?
No, actually it was not. It was based on a lot of stories like back, in the past where they would go around and interview all the different women. And so it was a live recording. There was a man a teacher who wanted to interview and get a story. So he was going there to write a story. And while he was there, he interviewed all the women in the community. And so they made it the autobiography because it was true stories that were being told. Oh. And then they had to give you an actual character. And that's why it was called the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. So Ernest Gaines, who was the author, actually grew up in Louisiana. And because he grew up in Louisiana and all these wonderful women were influential in his life, he wanted to write a story about the women, but it would be too many women to write the story about. Okay. So he created Miss Jane, and Miss Jane's voice was the voice of all the women in the community. Oh. Brilliant.
That is brilliant, because I always wanted to know if that was actually a real person.
Yes.
Whether she was a slave, or how she came about to be.
Yeah. When you think about it, though, that story covered over 100 years of her life, or the lives of women.
Yeah, because we're talking from slavery, actually almost like pre-slavery, up to almost the present.
Almost the present. So it was like the 60s, let's just say from the 1800s all the way past the Civil Rights Movement. Yes. I mean, she was 109, 110 years old. And we all know what happened between 1863 and let's just say 1963. Right? A lot.
Yeah, a whole lot.
So Jane says, she's seen a lot of wars. She's seen, people come and people go. She lived before the freedom came, and she lived after
the freedom came.
After freedom came. Yep. So, and believe it or not, a whole lot hasn't changed. It's sad to say that, but I mean, for all the gains that we made,
there are still those gains that
we don't have.
I mean, when you think about it, and think about her and all those women that brought Jane Pittman to reality, we think about what's going on right now.
Now, it's so real. It's so real. That's why I continue to tell the stories. Because one thing about a story is it touched the lives of people you don't even know. And people can relate to stories because it reminds them of people in their own lives, you know, that touch them. So one thing about Jane Pittman is the color line is gone. I mean, because people can relate to the stories.
That's it. More of the story. Now, Phyllis. Now, we all know Phyllis was real.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
What did you do to get Phyllis up there? How was your research? I mean, when I say how was your research, did you actually go and find people that actually knew her?
No, I didn't. Actually, you know, I started off reading Phyllis Wheatley's poetry.
Poetry?
And so when I read her poetry, I was inspired by her story.
Okay.
So it really started off as a very small skit on Phyllis Wheatley, and then it sort of grew because the more I learned about her, the more fascinated I became about her. I started reading her books about Phyllis Wheatley. I read her poetry. I mean, her poetry is something that, I mean, it's really a lot to read and understand in today's environment.
Oh,
and
okay.
because her poems, poems on various subjects, religious and moral.
Yes.
I mean, it was very, very heavy, and I couldn't really relate to it initially.
Oh, okay.
But the more research I did, the more books I read, the more videos I watched, the interviews that I watched really made me want to tell her story. And it's funny because it started off with me doing Phyllis Wheatley in the school system. Going to do
doing it with young
students and having them get ready. And that's what I used to do with Jane too, is I would have the kids watch the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and then I'd come in and do the skit, see?
And then they could see the difference.
And they could see the difference. They could give me the questions and answers, because I always had a question and answer session.
You did.
And to go back to Phyllis, with Phyllis, I still use the same type of format that I use with Jane. So Phyllis, I would do her poetry, say a little bit about her, but see, the difference with Phyllis is Phyllis was kidnapped around 7 or 8 years old, and so I could relate to the students. I could say to how many kids in the audience were 7 or 8, you know, and then make the connection with them. You know, and then as she came to America and was sold into slavery, I talk about that journey from Africa to the mid-Atlantic, the Atlantic Ocean, and we refer to it as the Middle Passage.
Yes.
And then I talked about all the achievements. It's a fascinating story of what she achieved at such a young age. I mean,
she achieved so much. In her writings, you can see that.
You can see it. And to think that at a time where
when you didn't dare
never
read or write.
Read or write. You know, there are so many blessings wrapped into that story. Although she came here as a slave, fortunate enough, the Wheatley family could see her genius.
Exactly. And they were the ones, they could see it.
And so they allowed their daughter, which was named Mary, to help her, to teach her the English language. But again, they were fascinated with her intellect.
And how very smart, like you said, her genius.
She was a genius.
She really was.
And
I mean,
her story needs to be told. And so I continue to, I even do an annual event with a group, the South Boston History Slam. You may have heard of them. What they do is they're in the Bob and Allison. What they do is we would meet at their home, and all these different characters, we would play come in character.
really?
And we'd portray these different characters, but we would go to the schools. And so we'd spend the whole day visiting schools in the city of Boston and going and bringing history alive. Oh, wow. And so it was stuff that took place in the 18th century. And so then I would sit with the different school students from like the kindergarten kids, and then the wrap-up was your high school students.
Oh, yes.
You know? And you could see the variation in stuff and the fascination, because now the book it's just not history with words in a book.
It's
real.
It's real. It's right out there. They can see it. They can touch it.
Yes, yes. And then you get them engaged.
Yeah.
You know.
So much so.
So that's what happened with Phyllis. I did the research, shared it with the kids. And you know something, when you're portraying these characters, you actually have to be on your game, because the kids, there was
They're
one
gonna
question.
ask you.
They're going to ask you questions. And you,
especially the little ones.
The little ones.
The little ones are going to ask you more.
it's going to make you think. So it makes you do your research. It makes you educate yourself in case they ask you a question. One question that one of the kids asked me, and I never really did find out the answer. They asked me, it was a little girl, and she said, what was Phyllis Wheatley's name before she came to America, when she was with her family?
And that's something we don't know.
And that's something we don't know.
I don't think we know that.
I never saw it written anywhere, but I mean, that made me go to book after book.
And look for it.
And look and see. I mean,
Did you ever find it?
never found it. Never found it. And she never actually even mentioned what her name was prior to that either in anything that I've read. Of course, I haven't read everything out there. But
And I knew you and I were going to have this conversation. There was a movie, there was a play that Jackie Parker wrote.
yes,
Phyllis Wheatley was the beginning.
yes.
And so it went from Phyllis Wheatley up to the Trump era, let's put it that way.
Uh-huh.
And her name was mentioned
What's it?
before she became Phyllis Wheatley.
Okay.
There was a woman that was with her during that time, and she was from her tribe.
There was a girl, too, that she was a pen pal with that lived in
who it
Rhode
was.
Island.
Oh, really?
And
Okay, this isn't the...
So I'm not sure, but it's wonderful, because I had intentions on seeing Jackie Parker, because every time I do Phyllis Wheatley, don't think that Jackie Parker's name don't come up.
Oh, I know it does.
Right, because it does. She's an exceptional entertainer
Yeah,
and writer.
absolutely.
And so, yeah, that would be, that's the one thing that I would love to hear. And if anybody's viewing this program and they know her name, and
Please let us
I would
know.
really like to know. So,
Please let us know. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I wrote an article on the play, and I'll have to get that for you, because
Yeah.
I think I still have that.
yeah, I had plans on going to see that, but I think it was some kind of conflict in my schedule. But I know I really respect Jackie Parker as a writer
me
and
too,
everything,
me too.
and actress and everything. So, yeah, so the Phyllis Wheatley story, it needs to be told by as many people as
can be.
possible, because it's amazing. I just said to somebody that I am telling the Phyllis Wheatley story, and this was a grown African-American person, and they asked me, who is Phyllis Wheatley?
See?
Who is Phyllis Wheatley?
Like, really?
So that's why I
That
know.
scares me. That always scares me, when we can get around and talk about our history, and even our adult people don't know. You know, it's like, how could you not know?
Yeah,
I mean, I remember Phyllis Wheatley from when I was a teenager,
sure.
you know?
You know, I had a fascinating opportunity to talk about Phyllis Wheatley from doing the skits and stuff. And one woman, Kate, she was a part of the Old South Church. So Phyllis Wheatley was baptized at the age of 18 at the Old South Church.
Really?
Right. And you know they're located in Copley Square.
Copley Square.
So every year they do an annual Phyllis Wheatley Day. So I was invited back to come and do Phyllis. Now at this point, I got a whole one-woman skit on Phyllis now.
You're doing your own thing.
So I went there and I was reading excerpts from the poems of Phyllis Wheatley. And then they have children. It's an interactive format where the kids learn about Phyllis. And then as part of Phyllis Wheatley Day, they actually go to where her statue of Phyllis Wheatley is. So they make it a field trip to take the kids, right?
Yep.
So, but this year it was a rainy day, so we could not go outside. So all of the activities took place inside.
Okay.
So I created this game. It's called the Phyllis Wheatley Game. And basically the students listen to the story, and in that is clues or quizzes where I would ask the kids. And so as a result of that, I got to meet an ancestor of, I talked about the church.
Yeah. Well, who did you meet?
I met Phyllis Wheatley's, an ancestor of, my mind went blank on me now, wait a minute, because I was going to tell you who was also baptized in that church that Phyllis Wheatley was baptized in. Okay, it's a moment, it's a senior
That's
moment
okay,
I'm
we
having.
get them. Wow.
Maybe it'll pop in
It'll
before
pop
the end
back
of the
before-
story.
Yes.
But anyways, the opportunity was just fascinating for me.
Oh, wow. That must have been phenomenal.
It was really, really good.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, so that just makes me know that the story needs to continue to be told. And, you know, as a culture, though, when you think about it, we've always told stories,
Yes.
you know? It's a lost art now, though, because the older
I know,
we get.
isn't it? The more we don't tell them.
Right.
The more we don't tell them. But before I forget, I want everybody to know about you doing this program at the, the live performance at the Great Hall?
Yes.
And tell my audience where and when.
Well,
What
actually,
time?
I'm sorry. I'm so excited about it, Elaine.
Yes.
Actually, tomorrow, February 3rd, I'm going to be at it's the Dorchester Winters Farmers Market. I'm sure many people have heard of it. It's on Talbot Ave. It's at the Great Hall. The address is 6 Norfolk Street. And from 10 a.m. to 1, they have tables set up where they be selling health and, you know, healthy foods. And I will actually be performing my piece, telling the Phyllis Wheatley story. I like to refer to it as her story lesson. And then the following Saturday, on February 10th, I will actually be doing my rendition of Miss Jane Pittman. And that, again, is from 10 to 1. I don't know the exact time I'll be going on, but it's an opportunity for people to come up and purchase healthy vegetables and see what other vendors are there. In addition to all of that, I will also have a table set up where I'll be selling my own
Yes.
Love Lives On book. It's a pink table, so look for the pink table. So it's going to be funny because I'll be in characters and I'll be signing as well.
And so you won't want to miss seeing Miss Valerie. We're going to have Miss Valerie do a little bit of a reading for us from her book. It'll make you all intrigued and want to come tomorrow and get the book and read it on your own. Valerie, would you just pick something?
Okay. I will pick just an introduction about the writer's journey.
Okay.
So, of course, it's impossible for me to remember everything. So I'll write as much as my subconscious mind will allow me to remember and leave the rest to creativity. First and foremost, I pray to God for inner strength, spiritual guidance, and the fearless courage required to complete such an important, difficult, and daunting and necessary task. So I've searched deep within my soul for the descriptive words to express my life's experiences. These are some of my most precious moments and inner thoughts. And thank you for this unique opportunity to share them with you. So one of my favorite quotes is, "Life is a journey, not a destination." That was by Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Listen, I love that.
So I've always appreciated this quote, and this is why my book was written. It's about life. And you know, life has a lot of lessons. It's about lessons about life, family, love, faith, and positive thinking. Love lives on.
So that's where you got the title from.
Yes. Love
lives on. That is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
You worked hard at that. I mean, I know that took a lot of tears.
Yes.
Laughter.
Yes.
Tears and laughter.
Yes. It was definitely an emotional journey. A lot of fear, a lot of love, though.
Oh yes, that was Did people get to gather around as you continued to write this? I mean, did you get a lot of information? It was just all you.
It was me because I was too afraid. You know what? I was so afraid to share this story because it was so close to my heart, I think, that I didn't really want to tell anyone. I mean, I told my husband, I told my sister and my mother, my brother. But beyond that, I was afraid to share my story. Even we did author swapping in the course, I was afraid to swap my stories with the authors.
With the other authors?
Yeah, because I didn't,
Really?
I wasn't ready for someone to to critique it, and this was my heartfelt story, and I went through a lot of emotions, and I just didn't want anyone to destroy my emotions.
And basically that would have been what it would have been.
And I followed my heart,
There you go.
and that was the final product. Love Lives On.
I love it. I really do. So tomorrow you're going to be doing Phyllis Wheatley, and then on the 10th you're going to be doing Miss Jane.
Yes.
Do you intend to do any readings of your book in any of these venues?
Yes.
Like tomorrow and on the 10th?
Yes, I plan on it after the event is over, after I do my portrayals on stage
There you go.
You know, I'm going to mingle with the crowd, and I will be reading excerpts from my book as well. So it's a fascinating day for me. I'm all hyped up. Between this taping here today and my performances for the next 2 Saturdays, I can hardly
Contain yourself?
contain myself.
What does your husband say about you writing this book?
Well, you know what? I had total support with him. I mean, I had those,
Oh,
I
I
called
know,
them
'cause
those.
I know him.
Right? I had those meltdown moments, and when I was ready to, like, you know, he would be there to, like, give me that hug or say, hon, it's okay, you know, stay focused, you know. And sometimes it would be just to just let me rattle on and on and on. Okay? All right, Val, you know you're going to.
That's right.
You're going to do
We
this.
got it.
It's going to be fine.
It's going to be fine. What do your children, what do your sons say?
My son, you know what? He's a very private person, like his father. Like, I'm the person that'll go out on the stage and do all the
Tell
talking.
everyone.
And they're
See?
more laid back, you know, like, don't call my, they'll tell me beforehand, please don't call my name when you up there doing stuff. You know, I'm
Don't
trying
you
to,
call my
don't call me by surprise, you know? But what surprised me is my son is very supportive. But when I did the book launch, he read it, and then he posted his quote on the Amazon page. And I read it. I was amazed that
He posted it?
he posted his comments right there. I mean, he's such a loving human being. He's a reflection of me and his father. And I mean, my son's 40-something years old, and I hear a lot of people talk about, you know, how they don't have these relationships, but my son talked about how we always said, I love you, even to this day. There's always that hug, and I love you when he comes to visit and things like that. So, yeah, my son is, as you can see, our pride and joy. We only have one son.
There you go. I only got one son.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
hear that one.
Yeah.
You know? It's just, what are your plans? You were saying this was your first book.
Absolutely.
You got another one coming?
I have another book that's coming soon.
Now, is it going to be on the same topic?
No, it's not going to be the same topic, but you know what? It's going to be
Or
an
similar.
extension.
It's an extension of this topic.
Yeah, because what happened is this book inspired my mother to tell me more, and then so all I'm going to say, because I'm not going to give it away.
Don't tell.
But I'm telling you, it's coming soon. It's coming in 2018.
You've already started.
We've already started.
Oh, this is going to be Mama's book.
Yeah, it's going to be a mother and daughter creation.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll leave it at
I can't
that.
wait. I can't wait. I'm going to want that one too.
Yes. Yes.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, yes. You know, you have to take your time. I'm taking my time with my mother. I'm not putting her on like a 9-week calendar. You know, it's whenever she feels she's ready. You know,
Yeah.
send me a little bit of this. I
This and
type
a
a
little
little
bit
bit
of
of that. You know.
Yeah.
So.
It's very funny. It's writing a book. My mom, I've been trying to get her for years to write a book. Because she always talks about different things all the time. And it's always, when are you going to write this book? And she's not really that, you know, good at keeping her thoughts in focus. But I've done things like got her a couple of different tape recorders. I got the ones that work on vocal. You don't have to press nothing. You vocal it on and vocal it off. Hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
And then it was a friend of mine who was telling me a couple of weeks ago, they said, you should just go down there, talk to your mom, bring a recorder with you, and just start recording what she talks about.
Yes, you know, I actually did that for many years too. Like I told you, I wanted to write this book. So I ran across a tape the other day where I recorded my mother back in 1980 something in a conversation that we were having. So I hope to use some of that content in the book. And my mother's like your mother. She's not going to really sit and type out nothing.
No.
But that tape recorder, you know, recording her and then typing it out is what I plan on using to create this next book.
Oh, wow, that is wonderful. You know, it's when you can take a book when you can take your story and turn it into a book, whether it's a big novel or a small book, but you're able to, I believe, give other people not only an inkling about you, but what you're writing can help someone else. And that was a little bit of what you said in the book. You know, if what I've written and what you read, you can take and bring into your own life, whether it's a happy moment or something that can help you within what might be a tragedy for you. You know, and that was great, and it made me, and I thought about that. You know, I lost a sister. I lost my best friend of 40 years, and it was very hard to lose both of them. And it's just, and my grandparents at different times. But when you realize that you've lost those connections and you wish you had more time, but when you can take that and put it into words, you know, and someone else can read that and say, well, I remember that. That happened to me with this person or that person, or it made this memory come back to life. And that was a beautiful thing. You know, and that's one of the reasons I loved about the book. It made me think of things that I remembered.
Yes.
You know.
I'm hearing that back too from a lot of different people. I initially wrote it as a personal project, you know,
Yep.
the positive feedback in the lives that it touched and how people are telling me that it's changed the way they're thinking and how they see themselves and their family and their loved ones. That was the goal. That was the goal.
Yeah, the loved ones, you know. And it made me think about that too. Yep, it seriously did. I loved it. I loved it. I wanted everybody to know, you know, come out tomorrow and definitely come out and get the book, because I think you will be absolutely mesmerized about her story and what she's gone through and her faith. And to me, that's the most important thing. And the strength as you said, your mom had that strength, and you wanted to have that strength. And you see, you're here, so you've got that strength.
Thank you so
and
much.
for you to write this book and to tell this story, I think it's absolutely amazing. And I appreciate you being here with me this afternoon.
Well,
I
I
really
thank
do.
you. Thank you so much.
You know? Yeah. I want us to do this again. When book 2 is ready, we'll be back.
Thank you. Thank you, BNN.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. This
Oh,
is
thanks,
wonderful.
Val. I'm glad you came.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you had a wonderful afternoon with us. Please come and join us again in March.